In this lesson, we will be continuing to look at our metric prefixes and specifically how we use those prefixes to do conversions from one prefix to another in the metric system. Looking at our learning targets here, those three targets that are already highlighted were the ones from the previous lesson. And in this one, we will take a look at how we convert units of different prefixes. So recall a few things from the last lesson. Recall that the metric system uses prefixes to change the size of units. We can make the units bigger or smaller depending on which prefix we want to use or need to use. All the prefixes in the metric system change the size of units by powers of 10. This is the beauty and the ease of using the metric system. I can make units 10 times larger or smaller, 100 times larger or smaller, 1,000 times larger or smaller, and there are actually many more prefixes other than those, but those are just the ones that we use in this class. So because we change units by the powers of 10, all we have to do whenever we convert from one unit to another is just to move the decimal point. As you remember from your math classes, if you multiply or divide by powers of 10, 10, 100, 1,000, a million, a billion, all you're doing is moving the decimal point left or right depending on if the number is getting bigger or smaller. And how many places you move it is based on how many zeros essentially that you're multiplying or dividing by. So for example, if I had this measurement, 402.5 meters, and I want to change that, say, to kilometers, that ends up as 0.4025. Notice the decimal point just moved left 3 places. It moved from between the 2 and the 5, and now it's to the left of the 4, so it moved left 1, 2, 3 places. Now you might be wondering how we know it should move left 3 places. Well, we're going to get into that here in some examples in the video here, but you can just see the ease of this. And then if I went to decimeters, it's 4,025. The decimal moved right 1 place from meters to decimeters. Or centimeters, it would move right 2 places. Or millimeters, it would move right 3 places. And we'll see how we know that as far as which way it should go and how many places. It's very simple. But the point is you don't even need a calculator. All you have to do is move the decimal and you have converted your unit. Alright, so how do we use a decimal system? That's the question. Well, there's a very simple way of doing that. And how we do that is with a simple chart. So the question is, how do we know where to move the decimal point? Well, we're going to draw a chart in our notes here. So start by drawing a line, pretty much the width of your paper. It doesn't have to go all the way across, but most of the width of your paper. And then right in the middle of that line you've drawn across, put a vertical line going through the center like you see here. Label that line there no prefix. So this is for units that don't have a prefix on them. So for example, grams, meters, liters, seconds. I'm not putting a prefix on them. I'm not using kilograms or milliliters or centiseconds. So if I don't have a prefix, that's what we're referring to here. And notice the value of that is 1. So if I'm just talking about a meter, there's no prefix in front of it, we're talking about a single meter, 1 meter. Going to the right, you can put 3 evenly spaced marks. I typically like to do them smaller than that middle one so that I can differentiate between that middle one with no prefix. And then going to the right, we are going to put our 3 prefixes that we've learned about that make the units smaller. So the first one, you're going to write deci, and recall deci means 1/10. So I'm going to write 0.1 there, or you could write the fraction 1/10. They are the exact same thing, as we know. And then going to the right again, I'm going to put the prefix centi, which is 1/100th, so 0.01 or 1/100. And then going to the right one more place, that would be the prefix milli, which is 1,000th, so 0.001 or 1/1000. So what you'll notice here is each of these lines that we have put on our chart here represents a power of 10. As I go to the right 1 space, and to the right another space, to the right another space, our unit is getting smaller by a power of 10 each time. I've gone from 1 to 1/10 to 100th to 1,000th. So every time I go to the right, my unit gets smaller by 1 power of 10. Now we're going to do the same thing going to the left. So I'm going to put 3 marks going to the left of the no prefix. And then I'm going to fill in with those prefixes. Now the first two are ones from the last video that I told you didn't have to worry about memorizing. And that's still the case. You don't need to worry about these first two. But I'm going to put them on here just for completeness. So 10. So notice now I'm getting bigger than 1. If I go to the right, I'm getting smaller than 1. 1/10th, 100th, etc. If I go to the left, I'm getting bigger. So I'm going from 1 to 10. And the prefix for 10 is deca. And then if I go one more to the left, it's hecto, which means 100. And then going to the left one more place is kilo, that is 1,000. Now, again, recall these two, hecto and deca, you do not need to worry about memorizing because we do not see them very frequently at all. But I just put them on there just for completeness. Now, that being said, even though we said we don't need to memorize those, we still need to know that kilo here goes in this third spot, okay, to the left of the no prefix. So if you are doing this chart on your own, and you'll need to be able to do that, you'll need to be able to know that no prefix goes in the middle, and then deci, centi, milli going to the right. Going to the left, you still need 3 decimal places, 3 marks, and kilo needs to go in that third one. Now, we don't need to worry about remembering the names of these other two. You wouldn't have to put them there because we just rarely use them. But don't think that means that kilo should go here in the first spot, because it would not. So we can use this chart to determine in which direction and how many decimal places the decimal point must move in order to convert units with a different metric prefix. Now you might be wondering how we would do that. Well, I'm going to show you several examples. So how does the chart work? Well, let's see. So here's the question. Determine the number of centimeters in 25 meters. So in other words, 25 meters equals blank centimeters. I want to know how many centimeters that is. Now, some of you might know off the top of your head already what you're going to do or what the answer is. That's fine. Please just really focus on using the chart here, as I'll show you how to do it. It makes things so simple in any situation. So here's what we do. I ask ourselves, what unit are we starting with? Well, we're starting with the unit meters, okay? I'm asked how many centimeters are in 25 meters. So I know I have 25 meters. So I'm going to put a decimal point at the appropriate spot in the chart. Well, I know it goes here with no prefix because the unit meter has no prefix. So recall this. The prefixes are never units in and of themselves. One thing that can be confusing for students at first whenever learning this is they may look at this little m and they may be thinking, well, m, that stands for milli, so I'm going to put that decimal point over here. But remember, if I'm using the prefix milli, it has to go with some unit. The prefix milli itself is not a unit. It would have to be millimeters or milligrams or milliliters. So in other words, anytime you have a prefix, you're always going to see at least 2 letters in the symbol, because the prefix has a symbol and then the unit it's going with also has a symbol. So if you just see one symbol like you have here with meters, that's no prefix. So we're starting with no prefix and we're converting it to centimeters. So the prefix we're going to is centi. So I'm going to put a decimal point there also on the centi line. Now I just ask myself, in which direction and in how many decimal places did my decimal point have to move to go from no prefix to centi? Well, just drawing on my chart here, it goes to the right one place to go to the deci, and now it goes to the right a second place to go to centi. So the decimal point moves right 2 places. So the decimal point must move 2 places to the right to convert from meters to centimeters. Now all I need to do is write out my answer. So I'm going to write the number that I'm starting with, 25. I'm starting with 25 meters. And remember where the decimal point is. Even though we typically wouldn't write the decimal point whenever we just write the number 25, remember that decimal point is immediately after the 5. It's after the ones place there. So now I'm just going to move it to the right 2 places like I showed there in the chart. So it goes to the right 2 places. So in these 2 blank spots that you see there, I have 2 blanks here now. I need to fill those in with zeros as placeholders. So notice my decimal point went from immediately to the right of the 5. Now it's 2 places to the right of the 5. So I put in 2 zeros there. My number has now gotten 100 times bigger because centi is 100th. There'd be 100 centimeters in a meter, so I need 100 times more. That's why I now have 2,500 centimeters. So to answer the question, 25 meters equals 2,500 centimeters. All right, let's look at another example. 34.2 milligrams equals blank decigrams. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my decimal point at the prefix or the place on the chart where we're starting. Well, we're starting with milligrams, so that's the prefix milli. So I'm going to put my decimal point there, and I'm converting it to decigrams. So I'm going to put my second decimal point at deci. Now ask yourself, how many places do I need to go and in which direction? Well, that's 2 places to the left because I'm starting at milli. I go to the left 1 place, I get to centi. Left a second place, we get to deci. So now I just need to figure out my answer. So I have 34.2 milligrams to start. I move my decimal point to the left 2 places, and now you can see it's here to the left of the 3. So my answer then, 34.2 milligrams equals 0.342 decigrams. Because my decimal point went from between the 4 and the 2, it went left 2 places. Now it's in front of the 3, so 0.342 decigrams. All right, I have one more worked out example here to show you. So I'll put it up here. So the question is 0.029 kilometers or kilometers equals blank meters. Why don't you pause the video, try this yourself, and then play it and see how you did. All right, so you've given this one a shot. So we're starting with kilometers or kilometers if you prefer pronouncing it that way. So my decimal point will start here on the kilo line, the 1,000 line, and then I'm going to meters. Now that's no prefix, so I'm going here to the middle line. Again, we talked about this on the first example. This can be a bit confusing in that some students will look at this little letter M and think milli and try to move it all the way over here. But again, remember, prefixes in and of themselves are never units. If you just have one letter there, one symbol, it has to be no prefix. So going from kilo to no prefix, I can see my 2 decimal points now. I have to move the decimal to the right 1, 2, 3 places. So now I can just take my 0.029 kilometers. I move my decimal point to the right 3 places. So now it's out there to the right of the digit 9. And then my answer, you can see now, is 29 meters. Now you might be wondering what happened to these zeros in front. Those are certainly not necessary, and really we should not put them there. You just think about this. If the decimal point is to the right of the digit 9, then I have 29. I don't need those zeros out front of that. I don't need 0029 to show the number 29. Okay. So here are some practice questions, and what I want you to do is pause the video, try all of these yourself. Now on this first one, I ask you to draw the chart for metric conversions. It's the same thing you've just seen on the previous slides. You will need to be able to do that on your own. I will not give you that on a quiz or a test. If you want to use it, and many of you will definitely want to use it, in fact, I think all of you would want to use it, you need to be able to draw that out on your own, including labeling it with the correct prefixes in the correct places. So that's the first one. Pause the video, and then once you've answered all these questions, play it and see how you did. All right, so you've had a chance to do this. Now, I'm not going to put the chart up here on this screen again. If you need to see what that looks like, you can go back in the video and see the previous slides. But for each conversion, so the first one, we have centimeters to decimeters. So this one here, the decimal point should move left 1 place. So we should go from 37 centimeters to 3.7 decimeters. For B, we're going from 450 milligrams to grams. So here the decimal point should also move left, but now it's going to move left 3 places. So this should be 0.45 grams. And again, notice that 0 that was after the 5. It would not be wrong to put it there. The value's not any different, but it's not necessary. So I just put the 0.45. For C, we're going from liters to kiloliters. Again, the decimal's moving left. Apparently, I like the decimal moving left here, these first few. This one will need to go to the left 3 places, from liters to kiloliters. That's a factor of 1,000, so left 3 places. And so I go from 3.2 liters to 0.0032 kiloliters. On D, now my decimal gets to move right. I'm going from kilograms to grams. Now remember here, the decimal point starts after that 0. So if it starts after that 0 and I move it to the right 3 places, like I'm going to need to do, I have 3 empty spots I have to fill in with zeros. So I go from 890 kilograms to 890,000 grams. And then finally, on the last one, from deciliters to milliliters, my decimal will need to move to the right 2 places, looking at that chart. So I go from 0.0048 deciliters to 0.48 milliliters. All right, this completes our lesson on metric conversions. You will get a lot more practice with this in class. So if you have questions, make sure once we're working on it in class, we're really getting our hands up and getting the help that we need.